Here we continue with another North American ancient story, as told by David Cusick in 1825. The Flying Heads. We pick up where we left off. This story about the flying heads took place in this area around Oswego, New York, today. 200 years ago, in 1825, David was writing these ancient stories of his people down. And here we are exactly 200 years later, and I'm reading them to you in a YouTube video. David wrote that this story is part of the origin of the kingdom of the Five Nations, which was also called Longhouse. And these five nations were part of like the Mohawk, New York Native American alliance that was fighting in the French Indian Wars and also in the American Revolution War. By some inducement, a body of people was concealed in the mountain at the falls near what's called today Oswego, New York. The falls we named Tuscarora, now Oswego, New York. When the people were released from the mountain where they were concealed, which you wonder what they were being hidden from, obviously from danger and mortal harm. So they'd been living in the mountain for a while, and they were then, after being released, they were visited by the holder of the heavens. And his name was Taran Yahwagan. And when I think about my Christian upbringing with the Bible stories, the Yah, Y-A-W in the middle of here is very similar to Yahweh, I am the way. And then wagon, there's like a lot of references for, chariots of fire going up into the heavens like a wagon. So like they were visited by this holder of the heavens has some similar connections to the Bible stories. He had the power to change himself into various shapes. So the holder of the heavens ordered the people to proceed toward the sunrise as he guided them. And they came to a river named Yanononachi, going round a mountain, is what it meant, now called the Mohawk River. And they went down the bank of that river, and they came to where it discharges into a great river, which ran towards the midday sun. Today we call it the Hudson River. David's ancestors called it the Shawnatati, meaning beyond the pineries. So, beyond the pineries, I guess they're coming out of like the pine trees and maybe down towards the plain and onto the river plains. And the Hudson River went down the bank, and they touched on the bank of a great water, meaning, in my view, the Atlantic Ocean. So that's where this story takes place about the flying heads. And this is very mysterious to me. I'm going to give a little bit more about what the holder of the heavens working with the tribes did as well. They formed a confederacy. Originally there were 6. One of them was David's ancestral tribe, was the 6th tribe, Tuscarora, and they went the furthest afield and went down and settled onto the News River in North Carolina today, and they were called the Katana, today known as the Tuscarora. The other 5 families stayed up north in the New York State area, and they formed their 5-nation confederacy otherwise called the Longhouse. So it's these people, the five nations. The story of the flying heads is their story. The Holder of the Heavens taught them many things to protect them from danger and to be able to shoot and hunt game for sustenance. He taught them the art of bow and arrows. It was now another 100 winters since the people left the mountain, and the five family nation was increased, and they made villages throughout the country. The Holder of the Heavens was absent from the country, which was destitute of the visits of the Governor of the universe. This reason produced the occasion that they were invaded by the monsters called the Flying Heads. Tuscarora Native, otherwise known as the Flying Heads. They devoured several people of the country. The Flying Heads made invasions at night, but the people were attentive to escape by leaving their huts and concealing themselves in other huts prepared for that purpose. In one instance, there was an old woman which resided at Onondaga, and she was left alone in the hut at evening, while others deserted. So maybe they were already tucked away in the camouflaged backup huts. And the old woman was sitting near the fire, parching some acorns, which are from the oak tree. They're the little nuts from the oak tree, and she had them on the stick you can see in the picture here. So she's parching or roasting them so they were edible. If you've ever picked up an acorn in the forest, you know it's very dense and wet. You can't eat it without drying it out over a fire. When the monstrous head came to her hut and made an appearance at the door, while it was viewing the woman, it was amazed that she was eating, apparently, the coals from the fire, by which the monsters were put to flight. And ever since, the Flying Heads disappeared and were supposedly concealed deep in the earth. So, it's interesting that there's some probably real thing that happened with them, and they were being chased. And how do you describe something so indescribable? So it's speaking to like a higher technology if they could fly around. A flying head makes me think of all the stories, and I've heard of people seeing sightings of flying objects around the Great Lakes. I think especially around Lake Erie, just a little further away. But a flying head would be kind of similar to a flying saucer. So I think it's speaking to something, and if you were taken in one, like you would be devoured by it, right? So that's kind of a wild concept, but possible. And then if that's true, then they didn't have the understanding of cooking over fire, and that's what scared them away. This also reminds me of stories of where like the most weak and the oldest is the most vulnerable, is the one that scares off the greater evil being that's seeking to destroy humanity. There's a lot of stories like that we know, like David killing the giant that was threatening his people and killing his people, the Israelites, over and over. So that's kind of like a similar, small, vulnerable attacking power. And then there's just this whole mystery of, here he is drawing a picture of it, of of the flying head as was his mind of the lineage of the storytelling that came down to him through his people. There's a lot more stories in this book. I'm going to try to keep breaking them out one at a time because there are so many layers to them. I really like how in this particular story too, he's explaining where they came from and the fact that they were kind of hidden in a mountain. I think about when there was glaciers breaking, big rocks sliding down across the state of New York. You can see scientists today with asteroids, they'll say this are the pockmarks you can see on a satellite from ancient times. So you wonder if that could be why they were hiding in the mountain for a while before it was safe to come out and try to live off the land and in nature. Very interesting. Hope you enjoyed this one. More to come. Namaste.